Are you looking to quickly improve your English speaking and grammar skills? One of the quickest ways to do that is by focusing on the most common mistakes that English learners make and fixing those problems. That's exactly what I'm going to help you do today. Hi there, I'm Gabby, and in the past 10 years of being an English teacher, I have met so many students from all over the world, and I've heard thousands and thousands of grammar and speaking mistakes. I started to notice something after a while. No matter what level students were, or no matter where they were from, or what language they speak, the mistakes that they were making were the same. So I decided to write these mistakes down, and now I have a list of over 150 common mistakes. Today, I'm going to focus on the 10 most common mistakes that I hear students making over and over again. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can get my weekly lessons right here. All right, let's get started. Number 10 most common mistake is word order with yes and no questions. Do you know where is my book? This is incorrect. It should be, do you know where my book is? Yes and no questions typically have some kind of auxiliary verb or modal at the beginning. For example, do you like pizza? These types of questions have a different word order than other questions and other statements. For example, do you know where my book is? Notice the order of the question. Do you know, verb, and then where, which is a WH word, my book is. For example, here is, this is my book. Is my book. Where is my book? Where is my book? Then, once we add an auxiliary verb to the beginning, like do, the word order has to switch. Do you know where my book is? Number 9, 2 weeks later versus in 2 weeks. When I ask students when they're going back to their country, they typically say, I go back to France, I go back to India, I go back to Colombia 2 weeks later. This is incorrect. What you should say is, I go back to my country in 2 weeks, not 2 weeks later. Let's talk about why. When we use the word later, we use it for 2 weeks after a specific event. It's like saying 2 weeks after that. For example, I arrived at the doctor and I had to wait a long time. The doctor saw me 2 hours later. Or, I went to the doctor and I got sick 2 days later. This means 2 days after I went to the doctor. 2 days after a specific event. When we say in plus time, this is talking about the amount of time before something happens. It's also like saying in the future. I have to leave for the doctor in 2 hours. 2 hours in the future. So remember, if you're talking about a future event, don't say 2 weeks later, 3 months later. Say in 3 weeks, in 3 months, in 3 hours. This next one is a big one. Explain me, suggest me, recommend me. I hear this mistake almost daily from my students. So let's talk about this. Gabby, can you explain me this grammar? That is incorrect. We never use me after explain. What you can say instead is, teacher, can you please explain this to me? Can you explain the grammar to me? Can you explain the rules to me? So we usually put a noun instead of a direct object after the word explain. So again, can you please explain this to me? Or can you please explain? Can you please explain more? The same is true of suggest me. I'm from New York City, and when we have students come here to learn English, they always ask me for suggestions and recommendations. One of the things they ask me almost daily, Gabby, can you please suggest me some nice restaurants? This is incorrect. We never use a direct object with suggest. So we never say, can you suggest me? Instead, we would say, can you please suggest some nice restaurants to me? Or can you please suggest some nice restaurants? If you're going to use me, you're going to say to me after the noun. So for example, can you suggest some nice Mexican restaurants to me? But typically we don't even say to me. So you can say, can you suggest some nice Mexican restaurants? Now with recommend, we can use me. However, it's not so common. So can you recommend a nice date spot for tonight? Mistake number 7 is near to versus close to. Students will often say, I live near to Central Park. This is incorrect. We don't use to with the word near. Instead, you would just put a noun there. I live near Central Park. I live near the Eiffel Tower. I live near Machu Picchu. So do not use to with near. Instead, you can also say close to. I live close to Central Park. In American English, it's very common to use close to more than near. Oh, I live close to you, instead of saying I live near you. So if you'd like to use to, just use close to plus the noun, but never use to with near. Another quick tip here is that we typically don't have nearby plus the noun. So I will hear students say all the time, I live nearby Central Park. That's incorrect. We would say, I live nearby. So if I'm at the school and my students say, oh, I live nearby, we would just say, I live nearby, not I live nearby the school. So just forget about the noun and end the sentence with nearby. The next one is using the word with marry and date. We don't do this. For example, many students will say, I want to marry with an American guy. I want to date with a tall, handsome guy. This is incorrect. We do not use with marry and date. What we would say instead, she married an American, not she married with. He married a foreigner, not he married with a foreigner. She's dating our new classmate, not he's dating with our new classmate. So remember, never use with the verbs date and marry. Number 5 is borrow and lend. Gabby, can you borrow me a pen? This is incorrect. When we use the word lend, we say subject plus lend plus direct object. For example, can you lend me a pen? Again, can you lend me a pen? When we use the word lend, we have a direct object, but not borrow. Borrow, for example, would be, can I borrow a pen? So borrow has a noun after, not a direct object. Can I borrow $20? Sure, you can borrow $20. Can you lend me $20? Sure, I can lend you $20. Do not say borrow me. In American culture, we love to give our opinions about everything. Whether we're talking about politics or pizza, we love to talk about what we love and what we hate. So for this reason, it's really important that you know how to argue with an American in English. Over in my IGTV, I have a video just specifically for this. However, I wanted to talk to you about one of the most common mistakes I hear all the time. All my French speakers out there, listen carefully, because this mistake I hear most from all of you. When I give an opinion in class and I have my students debate, they have to tell me whether they agree or disagree. What I typically hear students say is, I'm agree. Gabby, I'm agree. Now, when they say this to me, I make a joke and I say, you're agree, but I thought your name was Enzo. I thought your name was Sarah. And then they look really confused. It's like saying, hi, I'm Gabby. Hi, I'm agree. So if you say I'm agree, you're introducing yourself as agree. You're basically turning agree into an adjective. But agree is a verb, so we don't need to be. We say, I agree, I disagree. We don't say I'm not agree, by the way. I agree, I don't agree, I disagree. Or we can add a word like strongly or absolutely. I absolutely agree. I strongly disagree. So again, agree is a verb, so we do not say I am agree. Now, sometimes in older English, groups of people would say, we're agreed on the topic. But that's only if you're saying we're agreed on a choice, when people come to a consensus. We don't use this for individual opinions, which is why we don't say I'm agree. The next mistake I hear often is people using have with numbers to talk about age. How old are you? I have 25 years. This is wrong. When we want to talk about age in English, we use to be plus the years. For example, you should say, I'm 25 years old, instead of I have 25 years. So again, my cousin is 14 years old. We typically say years old, we don't say years. My cousin is 14 years old. My mother is 45 years old. We don't say my mother has 45 years. Many students ask why some Americans use have with years. Here's why. Sometimes when we're talking about experience that we have in a certain area, we use have plus a number of years. For example, I have 10 years of experience teaching English. I have 10 years of experience. So this is one specific way that we use have plus a number, but normally this is not common. Here's another age-related mistake. This is just a little bonus. If you're going to a restaurant and you have a reservation or you need a table for 5 people, don't say we are 5. Instead, say there are 5 of us. If you say we are 10, you're basically saying we are 10 years old. So don't say we are 2, we are 3. It sounds very strange in American English because it sounds like you're saying how old you are. So again, you can say there are 5 of us, or we need a table for 5. Mistake number 2 is a big one. For versus since versus during. I'm pretty sure that I've heard this mistake every single day for the past 10 years that I've been a teacher. So let's break this down. I've been studying for 3 hours. That's correct. I've been studying since 3 hours. That's incorrect. I've been studying during 3 hours. That is also incorrect. So let's talk about why. When we use the word for, we use it with a period of time. So think about the number 2. For 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 2 decades. I think you get the idea. For plus a period of time. So if you're studying English somewhere or if you're on vacation, you can say, we've been here for 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. However, when we use since with a point in time, a specific point, a specific event. For example, she's been studying in New York since January, since the winter, since 2020, since the war in her country, since 5 o'clock. So with since, you have to give specific points in time, not a length of time. And finally, using during. Now here's something to remember. We never use during with a number right after. So we never say, I've lived here during 3 months. Never. During we usually use to talk about what happened in a specific time frame. So we would say, for example, many people were laughing during the movie. So during is followed by a noun of some kind, not a number. During quarantine, she lived in New York City. During the summer, during the presentation. So again, never use during with a number. We use it with a noun. And finally, mistake number 1 that I hear most often in English is come back versus go back. I come back to my country in 3 months. Wrong. I go back to my country in 3 months. Right. So let's talk about this. Remember that when we use the word come, it's usually for where we are at the moment. So if you're at school and someone says, when are you coming back to school? I'm going home for a few hours and then I'm coming back, because that's where you are. So if you are in New York City and you're talking about when you go back to your country, you can't say, I come back to my country, because you're not in your country. You're in New York City. So instead you would have to say, I go back to my country in 3 weeks. So remember, you can only use come wherever you are at the moment. Right now, I'm home. So I'm gonna say, I come back home in 3 hours. Or it takes me 10 minutes to come back home from work. But if I'm talking about going somewhere else, I go there and come back here. Well, that's it. Those are the 10 biggest and most common mistakes that I hear students making daily and weekly. So here's what you should do now. Write these things down and focus on them. Notice when you speak whether you're making these mistakes or not, because if you fix the most common mistakes that you have in English, it takes your English to the next level. Don't forget to give me a like if this video helped, and don't forget to share this video with a friend so that they can improve their English too. Thanks for tuning in.